News, views, voices of the global Indian community. India abroad.
Thank you. We're standing in the historic Lafayette Park, right in front of the White House, and I'm excited to do this because it feels like everything has changed just in 5 days. The first 24 to 72 were like drinking from a fire hose, just trying to keep up with developments. The last two have been a little bit more sober, but about activation and mobilization. So what is some of the evidence? I mean, there are organic calls being organized by women, South Asian women as an example. There was a call which had 10,000 people. They raised money, they got volunteer sign-ups. One of the more interesting calls to me is more personal. It was this 26-year-old Hmong woman from Minnesota who has never voted. She grew up in this country. She was born and grew up. Her parents fled, Cambodia after the war. So she's been born and brought up in this country. She's a first-generation immigrant. So she said something. She said, for the first time, we have somebody on the ticket that I can identify as a first-generation immigrant. And she married somebody who is not from the Hmong community. She has never voted. She has never contributed. She says, how do I get 100 people? So when I talk to people like that, when I get the next generation, the first generation, the second generation of Indian Americans and South Asian Americans saying, how do I engage? We haven't seen anything like that. And so that level of enthusiasm is fantastic. It's led to record, as you know, fundraising numbers. 126 million in 72 hours for the campaign. But the most important thing of that is 440,000 unique contributors. In other words, the first time they've ever contributed in this campaign. So we are finding that energy. Now, how do you take advantage of that, build on it, go to the states where the votes really count, the 7 states, and build upon that and build a movement.
Which are those 7 states?
The 7 states, if you start west, Nevada, Arizona, both of which I'm talking about all the states Biden won, basically. In the 3 blue wall states, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and then Georgia, all of which Biden won, and we're in North Carolina in a big way now. We have a commitment from the campaign to be heavily engaged. The vice president has made 10 trips there. There is a governor's race that's pretty critical in the state. We have a state senator, Jay Chowdhury, from there. We have an organization on the ground called NCAT. We're ready. So it just put North Carolina almost, it was on the map, obviously, but it put it into play. Incredible black organizing in North Carolina and South Asian organizing. So we just have to get there and build that energy and put some events together and get her out there to talk to our community. But then our job is mobilize, galvanize and get them to vote. Look, if you are put on the ticket, if she's on the ticket, which Joe Biden did, it happened, just so you know, August 12th, 2020, that he announced it. We had an Indian Independence Day event on August 15th. And on the 13th, everyone is calling and saying, is she coming for this? Zoom. It was all Zoom in 2020. They both re-recorded their messages, and Joe Biden introduced her as my running mate, and she actually came on. And anyway, so we went in a Zoom from 100 people to like 1,000 something overnight, and 14,000 people viewed that tape. I can tell you that the community was excited. I mean, I knew that even in 2020. The question was, being excited and translating that into votes are often two rather distinct things. Because it's how do you take that energy, persuade people that it's worth their while, make sure that they are, if they haven't applied for citizenship and they can get it in 3 weeks, which by the way, you can get citizenship today in 3 weeks. So if you have a green card and you've been there 5 years, been here 5 years, get your citizenship. There's time. Register to vote. In many states, you have to register in advance, and there are deadlines. And finally, actually create a WhatsApp group, get 20 of your friends on there, remind each other every day why it's important, and get out to vote. Well, if you have early voting like North Carolina will start in September, go early to the polls. In Virginia, you can start in September. In Michigan, you can start in September. Go early, vote like your life depends on it, because that's what is at stake in this election. I can only say that we all learned about it probably at the same time. There were inklings, there were messages being sent, there were rumors, there was a lot of speculation in the media, but no, I had no prior exclusive knowledge of anything. My view of this was that if Joe Biden did this, it was going to be his decision, that the vice president and her team had their heads down and they needed to concentrate on being the best surrogate, the best number two, the best principal, and they did exactly that. So there was no leaks, there were no predetermined outcomes. The fact is that we knew that one day she could be president. The minute he picked her to be his vice president, it's called you stand and wait if you're vice president. It's the only job without a job description, except under the Constitution, I'm not here, you're in charge. So there was always the possibility she would be president. So I feel like she has been well trained. She's had 3.5 years to step into this, and you could see that happening immediately. So I would say the proof is in the pudding. She stood up, she could immediately and gracefully thank him. She could say immediately, I'm ready. They could move the campaign apparatus to her. She could start organizing, and she kept her schedule. She was supposed to go to Milwaukee. She did. She was supposed to go to Indianapolis. She did. To Houston. Because she's keeping her schedule. There was already a campaign schedule. It's just more complicated. She has to also pick a VP. She had to get the nomination done, which all of us helped with. We voted in the Virginia delegation to give her our votes. All the delegations voted. So now she has to pick a VP. She has to reorganize the campaign in her own image. But the momentum at the grassroots is what I'm talking about. These are organic things that are happening. And they happen once in a lifetime. They don't happen every election. Most elections are boring. You hold your nose and say, oh my God, do I really have to? And then you pick the least bad alternative. This election will be about a lot of new people showing up and saying, I want to show that I'm voting for a woman who's got a Jamaican and Indian heritage, a first-generation immigrant, a highly qualified, competent person. And I think there'll be a much bigger energy level on the positive side. And she has to frame out what she thinks the next 4 years will look like, which she will do in her convention speech. Like 360 degrees. There was becoming almost a sense of, oh gosh, this was ours to win and it's now his to win, his to lose. And then the assassination attempt. And you add those two events together and there was a definite sense of malaise. I call it we were paralyzed. We didn't know, we kept doing what we were doing. You should know I was in Michigan 2 weeks ago during all this at that point in time. And I still met people on the ground and they were saying, what are you people doing? Why aren't you talking to us? We're still engaged. We think is the fight of a lifetime. So it wasn't all over the place that malaise spread to. It was mostly in this bubble that we live in Washington. But you could sense that the momentum had been taken away. This one change of putting Kamala Harris on the ticket as the president nominee with the Democratic Party nomination changes everything. The whole game is different and the energy level is different. The money and donors are different and the grassroots is different.
130 million in 3 days.
Yes, which is the absolute record, and most of it was in small donations. That's just for the campaign. And then there are all the affiliated groups that got hundreds of millions of dollars in addition to that. The path to victory hasn't changed fundamentally. It's still these 7 states. I think the difference is that we feel much more hopeful about North Carolina and Georgia. And depending upon her VP pick, it'll affect Arizona, North Carolina, Pennsylvania. But we think that there's 7 states in contention. I would like to actually add Florida to the mix. I believe that the growing Latino population there and the AAPI population, particularly in Central Florida, is significant enough to move the needle. Florida is good because it adds a whole new dimension to this race. So I'm hoping this becomes an 8-state race. Earlier, to be honest with you, this was about getting to 270. Where how you get to 270 if you're a Democrat is you win your base, you win the blue wall, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, you're at 269. You add to that one vote from Nebraska or from Maine and you're at 270, or you add one other state. That felt like what we were playing for. Guess what? We're now saying 324, 332. Let's go for the broadest mandate she can get, because it'll also give us the opportunity to take back the House, hold the Senate, and be able to get things done. So I feel like the energy level has shifted, but the momentum has come to our side. So this I want to be sober about. Elections, and this election in particular, has had its cycles. It's gone like this and dying like this, and there will be more momentum changes, undoubtedly. Donald Trump is the most unpredictable, crazy man in American politics, probably in the history of American politics. But I haven't lived through all of those presidents. So anything can happen. I mean, you know, he could change his VP on a whim if he wanted to. So he can try to change the dynamics of the race. And he does have money, he does have support, he does have a base. So I still think this is going to be a very close race. Decided, I keep saying 50,000 people in a few places will decide this election. If we open the map up and we have an opportunity to pick up North Carolina, 16 electoral votes, if we even are able to put Florida into play because we have a great Senate candidate there, it changes the game. But let's get there. First and foremost, can you hold your community, your constituency, and win where you have to win? I believe we can win Nevada. I believe we can win Arizona and the blue wall. And I now think North Carolina and Georgia are in reach. So to me, the momentum shift is the black vote, the Latino vote, the Asian American vote. And then when you put subsets behind that, I think we have now decidedly brought everybody on the South Asian and the Indian American. If our vote would have been 70% for Kamala Harris or for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, it should be 80% now. So I think we will see more turnout and a higher percentage of that turnout voting in our favor.
And you're also asking Indian Americans of green card to
become citizens, because in the process that has been set up under Joe Biden's administration, it is possible to get a citizenship in 3 weeks. So you have 103 days. If you applied today and you got your citizenship in, let's say, 4 weeks' time, you can go out there and register to vote and vote in this election. Vote like this. Vote like your children are looking at you and judging you. And what will my history and what will people say I did at this moment? If anybody told you that they knew what Trump was going to do or say, they're probably making it up themselves, because he is such a obsessed narcissist. He makes it up himself. His line of attack shows he's confused. He actually doesn't know what to say right now. She's a woman. He seems to have trouble dealing with women, frankly. When you looked on the stage when he had Hillary Clinton, he had difficulty dealing with her. So I think that he has difficulty dealing with women. I think he absolutely does not know what to do with a person of color who's black and, South Asian. So he's mispronouncing her name deliberately. Deliberately.
You think that's deliberate?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, come on. He knows plenty of Indian Americans. He knows how to pronounce names. Supposedly he got an education from an Ivy League school. He ran a university, I'm told, sometime. He must know how to pronounce names. He's doing it deliberately because he's trying to say she's different. She's not one of us. It's a very big, it's like a bullhorn saying that. Calling her names, that's his style. That's what he does. I think who cares what he calls her? It doesn't matter. Using against her some of the things on what happened in immigration policy or on the border. You know what? She should own some of that because she was in the administration, but she can also articulate a vision for the future. The United States should have a humane immigration policy. The United States should have pathways to legalization. The United States should have legal immigration, and it should take care of those that have come here, grew up as children, as an example, in our community. They came here, they worked hard, they're getting educated, and now they're being told, whoops, sorry, it's going to take too long, you'll have to go back home. I think we should take care of those people. So a humane, just immigration policy that gives you pathways to legalization and to citizenship, I think we can come up with that. And this is a person, a first-generation immigrant president, should be able to stand up and articulate that and get it through a Congress. And that's why we have to win the House and the Senate alongside her. That's why we need a mandate to govern here. I don't see my picture in the Republican Party. They can change. They can want me, but they'll have to work hard to prove to me that I'll be listened, I'll be at the table. The Democratic Party has embraced diversity. In fact, Nancy Pelosi likes to say unity in diversity. I think she does more than say it, she means it. Look at the number of women in Congress. Look at the number of Indian Americans in Congress. Look at the number of Latinos in the Senate. We have never seen this before. Why? It's deliberate. It's intentional. If you said intentionally to me that both parties were working to get our vote and allowing us representation and a voice, I would be happier, because it's better to have two parties compete on a level playing field. The Republican Party has chosen to become a Christian, nationalist, white movement. It has, yeah, it does have a few blacks and a few Asians and a few South Asians, but they are almost tokens as far as I'm concerned. So prove to us that you actually believe in a humane immigration policy, that we belong here. When Donald Trump says things like immigrants are poisoning the blood of America, what does he mean? Why don't people, his donors who are, let's say, an Indian American, why don't you ask him, what did you mean by that? Did I come here and suck the blood of Americans out by being here? Did I cause harm? I have worked hard, I brought up my family, we educated, I made money, I did well, I'm contributing, I'm a philanthropist. Why are you saying these things about me? And he will say immediately, oh, I'm not saying it about you, I'm saying it about the others. Well, sorry, because when they come in the buses to deport, do you know how many Indians would be in those buses? The latest number is 725,000 Indians also do not have documentation that are living in the United States. So you want those buses to take people to concentration camps in the United States and then send them where? That is not humane. That isn't even, by the way, smart economics. It's absolute white nationalism. It says, my race is better than yours, my blood is purer than yours, I have a right to be here, you don't. I reject that. And the Democratic Party rejects it, and that's why I stand with them. You're free to exercise your right, please vote. That's number one. There's a certain percentage of people who will vote their pocketbook. If they think that Donald Trump's promises and cutting taxes is good for them, they might choose to do that. I personally think that's short-sighted. Is that, talk to your children. At the dining table, have a conversation with your children that grew up here and say, is that enough? Have that conversation with your nana, your appa, your daddy. I think you will hear something different from them. That's not enough. By itself, it's not enough to just improve your pocketbook. You should talk about the value systems. What makes America really truly an extraordinary country? It is not that we have the fairest economic system. It's not. Some people do better than others, but we have opportunity for all. So create a country where there's opportunity for everyone. Our children will thrive in it. That's what they want. So I don't say to them, don't go out and vote, don't exercise your franchise. Look at the comparison. Compare and contrast. Who is better for you, for your children, more importantly? At a certain age, when you've made money and done well, you should be thinking about your children, your grandchildren, and your legacy. I believe America that's more just, more equitable, where everybody has a seat at the table, where there's a humane immigration system, and fundamentally, everyone has an equal opportunity. I think that's an America we all want to be part of. So go vote your conscience. I hope that we increase the number of Indian Americans voting in this election. We go from at best 55 to 60% participation to 65 to 70 with Kamala Harris on the ticket. And I hope we go from 70% Indian Americans voting for the Democrats to 80. That's what we'll work on. It's pretty meteoric if you think about it. First generation immigrant, 59 years old, California, which gets painted with all kinds of brushes. Not only has her success been largely driven by her mother, and by the way, her mother was, according to all stories she tells us, a very strong woman. Imagine getting on a plane, 75 years ago from India to study alone with a few dollars in your pocket and figuring it out from there. And coming here, marrying, having 2 children, becoming a single mother, bringing them up. She had to be a very strong person. So that's held true for Kamala Harris. I think this is a very strong woman. She represents the Devi that is in her name, okay, in my view. That strength, it's about strength not without purpose. It's strength for purpose. I am purposefully strong to make sure that everybody in this country knows that they have an equal shot, that there is potential for all of us to succeed. I'm here to make sure the playing field is level as possible. So I feel like she had a purpose in her life, and we are now at the cusp of making that number one. She will be the first presidential nominee, a woman of color ever on a ticket, right? Major party ticket. And I think we will elect her the 46th president of the United States. I think that's the culmination, not of ambition, but of passion and purpose, combined with someone who's really smart, dynamic, and understands and cares about people. It's very hard to judge a vice president on policy performance because, first of all, they don't make the final decision. So this would be like taking the COO of a company and saying, you didn't hit your numbers on the revenue targets, it's your fault. Yeah, it is to an extent because you put numbers on a board and you presented it. But I'm not saying she doesn't have responsibility, that she's not part of everything that's happened. What I am saying is, let's ask her how she expects to fix it. So, okay, we did have a border crisis, but by the way, Joe Biden has done a lot to contain that. The number of border crossings today that are has dropped below 2,500 a day. Look, that was the best Donald Trump ever did. So it's not like you could ever shut the border down and say nobody can come. We have a huge border. It's not possible. By the way, among the top group of those that are migrating to this company and crossing, they're coming from Mumbai and Ahmedabad and Trivandrum, and they're flying to Nicaragua and they're getting to the border with Mexico and they're crossing. Indians, Chinese. It's not just, Central Americans. And many of them are educated. They're looking for a better life. We should make it very clear that there is a pathway to do this legally that works. And there's a humane way to treat people who come because they are oppressed in their countries or they are tortured or they are subject to hardship that is beyond, their suffering. We took in Ukrainians. Did you hear a lot of complaints? I didn't. So there's so much bias baked into the system. A president who understands that is going to come up with a policy structure. So let her articulate what she wants and how she's going to get it done. And I guarantee it'll be better than exists today and be way better than anything Donald Trump will ever do. Yeah. I think, again, this is fallacious. I mean, the Prime Minister, when he was here at one of his first visits, they had a private meeting. I had encouraged that meeting. And the reason was not because she was president, but she has connections to India. Take advantage of those root connections. Everybody does, by the way. Joe Biden goes to Ireland, he gets a hero's welcome. Right. Come on. I said in one of my pieces I've written, because my mother's from Chennai and her mother's from Chennai, I said, boy, to me the dream is she's president and we are going to Chennai. And she will get an enraptured welcome. And she should. If Bill Clinton could get it, why would you not welcome back the daughter of the mother of your soil? So yes, there should be excitement. I think the negatives always are going to be, what is she doing for us? How is she different than? American foreign policy should be dictated by American interest, unfortunately or fortunately. I think the same for Indian foreign policy. I always argue Indian foreign policy should be dictated by what's important to India. So let's just be adults. But here you have an emotional connection. Let's take advantage of it. Let's build on it to say, what's the next level we could take this? How could we create a partnership that was based on trust, mutual understanding, and when there are problems, we're in a family. We sit around the kitchen table and we figure out the answer. I just think it'll be stratospheric what can happen. But I will, if she's elected, I will be pushing and saying, let's go to India. But you got to go to Chennai. You got to go to Chennai. You can go to Delhi. I mean, Delhi's fine with me. You got to do all that. But Chennai, we got to go. Good question. And I don't know why it should look much different. Joe Biden appointed more women in his cabinet, more people of color, more judges. Most diverse administration in history. You look at the White House, 150 South Asians and Indian Americans there. Gautam Raghavan has a nice joke. He used to say that when he first came to the White House 20 years ago, he said, you could have thrown a rock and not hit somebody who looked like me. He said, now I can't turn a corner and not find someone like me. It's a positive thing. I don't feel that she needs to be different. She should pick the best person for the job, the most competent, but we're going to find plenty of our people there in positions that of influence. I just hope we control the Senate so that we can put people in the highest and most prominent positions and they don't run into biases on the Republican side. Because if the Republicans control the Senate, they will block everything that she does, just out of spite and not because the country will benefit from that. So if we do this right, we will win these 7 states. She will have 320 to 330 electoral votes. It will be a clear mandate. We will hold the Senate and we'll win the House. And let's go make the changes that are necessary. And let's keep this economy moving so that we're still the envy of the world. Get out there, get your citizenship if you haven't done it, register to vote, and then organize others to go vote. Join some of these groups, help us, help you succeed in your life, but as an American, exercise your right to vote. Vote for Kamala Harris.